Richmond, Virginia, 1865. A Confederate soldier walks through burned-out streets. He's hungry. He's been fighting for 4 years. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his month's pay, $20. He walks into a bakery. How much for the bread? The baker laughs. 92 Confederate dollars, or if you got real money, Union greenbacks, $1. His $20 worth 22 cents. The money his government promised would be as good as gold is now worthless paper. Now, here's the part that broke my brain when I found this. This didn't happen because the South ran out of soldiers, or battles won, or courage. It happened because a shopkeeper in Philadelphia with a printing press figured out how to destroy an entire economy with fake money. And when I started pulling this thread, I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about American history. The Civil War wasn't decided on battlefields. It was decided in counting houses, with ledgers, bonds, printing presses, and fake currency. This is the story of how America fought its first financial war. And once you see how this actually worked, you'll never look at money the same way again. Because the side that won, they invented the system we're all living in right now.
Fort Sumter, April 1861. The first shots fired. And immediately, both sides faced financial catastrophe.
The Confederate Congress. They chose ideology over survival, states' rights over tax collection. It doomed them.
Okay, let's set the stage. Fort Sumter, April 1861. The first shots are fired. And immediately both sides have the same terrifying realization. We have no idea how to pay for this. Here's the situation. Just 1 year before the war, America's entire national debt was $65 million. The Civil War would cost $3.4 billion. Let me say that again. They went from a $5.6 million surplus to a $423 million deficit in 1 year. Both sides knew whoever solves the money problem wins the war. But here's where the story splits into two completely different paths. The North does something that has never been tried in American history. The South does, well, we'll get to that disaster in a minute. Treasury Secretary Salmon Chase is having the worst day of his career. The Union needs massive amounts of money, but they're running out of gold to back their currency. So Chase walks into Congress with a proposal that sounds absolutely insane. What if we just create money out of thin air? Not gold-backed, not silver-backed, just paper. Backed by nothing but the government's promise that it has value. Congress freaks out. They remember the Revolutionary War when continental currency became so worthless that not worth a continental became a common insult. But Chase and Lincoln know they have no choice. February 1862, Congress passes the Legal Tender Act. They authorize $150 million in greenbacks, paper money backed by absolutely nothing except faith in the US government. This is revolutionary. This is insane. This should cause complete economic collapse. And here's twist number one. It works. By the end of the war, $450 million in greenbacks are circulating. Yes, there's inflation. Prices rise about 25% in some years, but the greenbacks fund 15% of the entire war effort and give the North financial flexibility the South will never have. But Chase isn't done. He's about to pull off something even more brilliant. 1863, the National Bank Act. And this is where the financial engineering gets genius. Here's how it works. Any bank that wants to become a national bank has to buy US government bonds equal to 1/3 of their capital. So if you've got $1 million bank, you have to purchase $333,000 in war bonds. But here's the trick. Once you buy those bonds, the government lets you print your own money. Up to $500,000 in national banknotes backed by the bonds you just purchased. Wait, what? Banks are essentially forced to loan money to the government to get the right to create currency. Think about what this accomplished. Millions of dollars flow into the treasury. The government creates a captive market for war bonds, and banks make it profitable to fund the war. This is financial engineering on a level that had never been attempted before. The Union created a system where funding the war effort wasn't just patriotic, it was profitable. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but couldn't the South just do the same thing? And here's where we hit twist number two. The South tried, and it destroyed them. Because the Confederacy had a fatal flaw built into their entire philosophy, they believed so strongly in states' rights that they refused to give their central government the power to collect taxes effectively. The North raised 20% of their war revenue through direct taxation. The South, 8%. Most southern states simply refused to collect federal taxes. Governor Moore of Alabama literally complained that collecting federal taxes imposes upon the state the necessity of enforcing the laws of the Confederate government. They were ideologically opposed to funding their own war effort, so what did they do instead? They printed money. Between 1862 and 1865, more than 60% of all Confederate revenue came from one source, the printing press. The North doubled their money supply during the war. The South increased theirs by 20 times. And this is where the death spiral begins. Let me show you what hyperinflation actually looks like. Beginning of the war, one Confederate dollar equals 90 cents in gold. End of the war, one Confederate dollar equals 1.7 cents. That thing that cost you $1 in 1861, by 1865, it cost $92 in Confederate money. A barrel of flour in Richmond, 1,000 Confederate dollars. A pound of tea, $35, a loaf of bread, $92. Now, imagine you're that Confederate soldier I mentioned at the beginning. You're fighting, you're brave, you believe in your cause, but your $20 monthly paycheck won't buy a loaf of bread. Your wife writes you, the children are starving, your money is worthless, come home or we die. What do? This isn't a hypothetical. This happened to thousands of soldiers, and here's the psychological horror. You're holding money in your hands, physical currency, but it represents nothing. Your government is paying you in power that has already surrendered, even though the army hasn't. Meanwhile, something even worse is happening. And this is where the story gets truly diabolical. Meet Samuel Curtis Upham. He's a shopkeeper in Philadelphia, and he's about to become the Confederacy's worst nightmare. February 1862, Upham sees something in the Philadelphia Inquirer, a detailed reproduction of a Confederate $5 bill that the newspaper printed to show readers what enemy money looked like. Upham has an idea. He buys the printing plate, starts producing his own copies, prints facsimile at the bottom, and sells them as souvenirs for a penny each. 3,000 fake $5 bills, sold out in days. But here's where it gets devious. Cotton smugglers operating across enemy lines realize that Upham's souvenirs are just a scissor cut away from being perfect counterfeits. They buy thousands, trim off the facsimile notice, use them to buy cotton from southern planters. Those fake bills then circulate throughout the Confederate economy as real money. Upham realizes what's happening, and he embraces it. He starts advertising nationally, Harper's Weekly, the New York Tribune, promoting his bills as mementos of the rebellion. He even offers to pay 3 times the value in gold for samples of other Confederate denominations so he can counterfeit those too. Within 90 days, his small stationery shop becomes a full-scale counterfeiting operation. April 1862 alone, he sells 80,000 fake Confederate bills. Jefferson Davis places a $10,000 bounty on Upham's head, dead or alive. Henry Foote, speaking before the Confederate Congress, declares that Upham has done more damage to the Confederacy than the whole Union Army. And he might be right. By August 1863, when Upham finally shuts down, he's printed 1.56 million fake Confederate notes with a face value of $15 million. Economic historians estimate Upham's counterfeits represented between 1% and 2.8% of all Confederate money in circulation. One man, with a printing press, created nearly 3% of an entire nation's money supply, and it was all fake. Now here's the twist that made my jaw drop. The Union government couldn't legally stop Upham even if they wanted to. Why? Because the United States didn't recognize the Confederate States as a legitimate nation. Since the CSA didn't legally exist, counterfeiting their money wasn't technically a crime under U.S. law. When authorities investigated Upham, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton personally dismissed the case. Some historians even suspect Stanton might have secretly provided Upham with high-quality banknote paper to improve his counterfeits. This is financial warfare at its most ruthless. By 1863, the Confederate economy is in complete freefall. But here's what makes it worse. The Confederacy can't even print good money. All the sophisticated printing equipment stayed in the North. Confederate currency is crude and easy to counterfeit. Criminals throughout the North start copying Upham's business model. Counterfeit Confederate money becomes so common that people joke fake bills are often higher quality than the real ones. The situation becomes so desperate that 40 of Louisiana's 48 parishes start printing their own money. Towns across the South, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, all issue local currency because national Confederate bills are too scarce or too worthless to use. Even private businesses get in on the act. Saddlers, railroads, insurance companies, all printing money substitutes to keep commerce flowing. The Confederate monetary system has completely collapsed into chaos. Meanwhile, the North is doing something incredible. They're building the foundation of modern American finance. While the South prints worthless paper, the Union sells war bonds internationally. Investors in England, France, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, Russia, Austria, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, even Cuban planters, all buy Union bonds. Why? Because they're seen as safer than Confederate securities. By the end of the war, international investors have purchased at least $400 million in Union bonds. The South manages to raise only £3 million through one bond sale in Paris, and most of that money is wasted on ships that are never delivered because of the Union blockade. The contrast is stark. The North's financial system maintains international confidence. The South's financial system becomes a global joke. April 9th, 1865, Appomattox. Lee surrenders, but here's the final truth. The war wasn't won at Gettysburg, it wasn't won at Antietam, it was won in the counting houses of Philadelphia and New York. While generals fought with armies, financiers fought with ledgers, printing presses, and bond on sales. The Union's financial innovations, greenbacks, national banks, income taxes, international bond markets, created an economic war machine that the agricultural, states' rights-obsessed Confederacy simply couldn't match. The South lost the war the moment they chose to finance their rebellion by printing money instead of building sustainable fiscal institutions. And here's why this matters to you right now. Every time you use a dollar bill, you're using the descendant of a Civil War greenback. Every time you pay income taxes, first introduced in 1861 as a temporary war measure, you're participating in a system created to fund Union armies. Every time you walk into a nationally chartered bank, you're entering an institution created by Civil War financial legislation. The monetary system that Lincoln and Chase built to win the Civil War became the foundation for American financial supremacy for the next 160 years. But here's the warning. That system is now under threat from the same forces that destroyed Confederate currency: excessive money printing, loss of international confidence. The rise of alternative monetary systems, the North won by innovating financially while maintaining monetary credibility. The South lost by printing money without building sustainable fiscal institutions. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. Which path is America choosing now? Because the lesson of the Civil War isn't just historical, it's a warning. You can't sustain armies without sustainable finances. You can't maintain sovereignty without monetary credibility. The Civil War proved that in modern warfare, the side that can innovate financially wins. And 620,000 Americans died to teach us that lesson. The question is, did we learn it? That's the hidden war. That's the financial battlefield that determined America's future. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. History doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. And right now, it's starting to sound awfully familiar.
You are watching Cold Money TV.